Hey guys, how you doing? I know it's been a while since I posted a video. I posted one a few weeks ago. Um, I just had some serious information. I think was reading the Wall Street Journal. Then I found out about what was happening in Sudan. That thing is actually getting worse. From what I'm hearing, about 32,000 black Sudanese Africans have been deleted over there. So it's getting worse. And unfortunately, the media, the Western medias have all been bought. So they're not even talking about it. And it's the countries in the Middle East that are financing the deleting of our people in Sudan. The whole thing is just dire, man. It's horrible. Um, but I'm tired of like just blaming everybody else. Hey, this person. I think we have to look in the mirror. I think the blame really lies on us, because where's the African Union? What's the African Union doing? Nothing. They're not doing anything about it. But anyway, that was that video I made. But I thought I just bring this up. However, today's video, I got something else I want to talk about. Something else of something we gotta think about it. Like, it requires serious thinking. It requires a lot of planning, and also it requires a lot of. And what I mean serious thing is where government sit down and actually think, not just follow. And I'll connect what I'm trying to say here with this to what I'm saying now to what I'm trying to say in this video. And recently there was the G20 in South Africa. The United States didn't attend, but I'm gonna post a video about that as a video for another day. But there's something I found that was quite interesting about what Russia said about how much money has been spent in the last 3 years to sponsor the war in Ukraine, compared to how much money has been given, not given, lent to the whole continent of Africa, the whole 55 countries. I think it's about 3 times or 4 times more money has been given to Ukraine than been given to African countries to help with their development. First of all, I like that Russia said that. It's good to bring these things up, but even that, like, I'm just tired of it. Like, we've heard these same stories before. I was gonna post a lecture by Doctor, later on became Sir Arthur Lewis. I think he's the only black guy to ever receive a Nobel Prize in economics. And there's something he said about, and you guys can look into this. Something he said about how South Korea developed. Because remember, South Korea was like worse than most African countries. But how did they develop? Because when the two countries were developed were divided, when there was South Korea and North Korea, a lot of money had to go into South Korea because they wanted to shame the other guy. This has always been a battle. So it was a way to shame China and Russia, because the other one of the North Korea took the route of communism, where South Korea took the route of democracy and capitalism. So they had to sponsor South Korea to show that democracy and capitalism is what works. If they never sponsored it, there's no way South Korea was even going to develop, because you needed money. But here what South Korea took that, and they took advantage of it. Even back then, I think it was in the 90s or so. In the 90s, South Korea, the whole continent of Africa, I think, was receiving something like a few $100 million, where South Korea was receiving something like $50 billion. And South Korea decided to and you gotta give that to them, because and I said, and I'm coming to this because I have to explain why we are actually where we are. South Korea took advantage of that. What they decided to do is they started to put money in entrepreneurs, the people who were already doing business. They sat down with them, and then they told them, "We want you to experiment, and it's okay for you to lose. don't worry about it. We want you to experiment. And that's how today you get companies like Samsung, Hyundai, Kia, and all these South Korean international global brands today. It's because that's why you see if it's Hyundai, or I say Hyundai, you might say Hyundai, whatever. It's a car maker, and Kia. They're owned by the same guy. They're sister companies, same family. Because the country realized, picked up countries, families that were already big business family and sponsored them and said, we want you to get your wildest dreams out and see if we can make something out of that. Some of the things failed, but out of that, a few things did extremely well. And South Korea, I think, was able to repay. I don't think they fully repaid most of the money that was invested, but also it was a strategy by the U.S. government and European governments to go put money into South Korea. But what they were doing indirectly is transfer their inflation to that country, because now instead of having something they did with China, instead of having a fridge cost $10,000 in America, which most Americans can afford. And I know some of you guys in Africa, you might say, oh, they can afford that. No, they can't. 60, there was a recent survey that came out a few months ago where they found over 60% of Americans don't even have $1,000. So how are they going to afford a $10,000 fridge? Even if they were to put it on paying in installments, on a payment plan, it was gonna get to a point where it was just gonna be almost impossible to pay off. But when you transfer inflation to other countries, basically you go to countries where the wages are so low that they'll be able to produce that same fridge that could have cost maybe $5,000 to produce in America. They could produce it at $200, and now you can sell it in America at $1,200, which becomes now affordable to most people, even with a payment plan. Okay, and that's how you see South Korea did it. It wasn't, a lot of people think it was some miracle or whatever, but what we have to give the South Koreans credit is that they saw an opportunity, took advantage of it, and developed their country. Now, could Africa do the same? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And my answer to that is, I don't know, which is sad, because I should just be able to say, yes, they can, but I don't know. Because let me tell you something. So the World Bank gave Ukraine, they've given Ukraine all this money, lots of money, and America has given them all kinds of money. The European countries have given all kinds of money, so much money. But you have to realize that those people are gonna benefit once the war is over. They're gonna rebuild Ukraine and just start rebuilding, and all that. They're gonna be American companies, European companies, and all these big companies trying to go there and rebuild all those things. That's it's more like an investment already. There's gonna be so much money to be made, and when Ukraine comes out of this war, it might have even come out better economically than what it was, because the economy, Ukraine was pretty much the same as Kenya. I think it was about $100 billion economy. But you also have to remember, and this is a video for another day, Ukraine is going to be part of the Israeli Empire, or the United States of Israel. Same thing with Syria. Same thing with the United States. But that's a video for another day. So there's a lot of, the J people have a lot of money. So they've already put money aside to help develop Ukraine. The problem we have in Africa, and the problem why the World Bank are not willing to lend you money, it's because of you. Even when they lend you money, they tell you where to put that money. I'm gonna do a video about how Paul Kagame managed to beat the World Bank at their game. Because, when they lend the money, they tell these Africans where to put the money, or we want you to put it in education. But you can educate whatever people, but if they can't find work, there's no point in that. You can educate all these people. If the education is crap, they're not going to produce anything. It's just a waste of money. So Kagame actually took the World Bank money and invested in things that has actually produced results, because he's a thinking president. He looked at everything, said this is what they want. These people don't even live with us. They don't know what we need. But anyway, but they got the money. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the money and I'm gonna put the money in things that actually can develop my country. Because I live here, I understand how things work, and I understand what we need to develop the country. Most African presidents don't have that mindset. The money comes in and they use it on useless things. And it gets to a point where we owing the World Bank money. And now after a few years, the World Bank has to now like forgive. That's Africans like that stuff. Forgive us. And the World Bank has to forgive us. But what these countries don't realize, if the World Bank has forgiven you in the past, that goes on your credit record, which means they don't want to now be lending you money. They'll be lending you just for the reasons that they they feel sorry for you, not based on merit. And this is one thing we have to know as Black people. Merit, it gives you something to stand on, But if the World Bank have lent you money before, and all it did is just caused economic chaos, and you wasted the money, which happens on buying private jets and building large palaces for your presidential palaces and all that stuff, and then the money disappears, it's not going to work. They're not going to be lending you money again. And that's the struggle. And if they lend you again, it's going to be high interest, because the chances of you defaulting, which is based on data, that in the past you've defaulted 2, 3, 4 times, they've done the World Bank has lent you money. So now the risk of them losing that money is quite high. That's why the interest is high. That's how these things work, guys. Now, there's also bias there and racism attached to it. So when you add those things, all those things together, it makes it harder for African nations to borrow money. However, if we allowed the money to be lent to us on merit, where we had a good record, we can say, you know what, in 40 years ago, you lent us $2 billion. We gave you back $2.5 billion. 30 years ago, you lent us $5 billion. We gave you back $6 billion. 5 years ago, you lent us $10 billion. We gave you back $11 billion. So now we have a record. There's no way you can deny lending us $15 billion, because we have a record that we always pay back the money. Our African countries don't have that. So that's the problem. So don't blame these Western countries. But if you had that record, then obviously the bias and the racism going to impact you. But I think they're going to have less effect. It's going to be there. It's always going to be there, but it's going to have less effect. So you might go there to get 10 billion. They might give you 7 because of that. The bias and the racism. However, the bigger part is your credit worthiness. And most countries in Africa, because we don't even understand what credit means, whenever they get the money, they can't pay back. And they can't pay back because they don't sit down and sort of come up with policies that helps them pay back that money. Policies such as making sure every country operating in the country, in their natural resource sector, pays the right taxes, does everything right. If anything, African countries don't even need to be borrowing money from the World Bank. We already know that for every $20 Africa gets, it loses $100. So if I was president of any country, my job would be to block those loopholes so we don't lose the money and we get the right taxes. Right now, copper prices are going through the roof because of AI. AI is copper hungry. Data centers, whatever, they need copper. But when you go to Africa, see all the mines with the big copper mines, Congo, Zambia, etc., those countries. See how much money they are getting from copper. Nothing. But the copper keeps leaving. So we haven't done anything. We haven't sat down and designed something to help us capture all these taxes that we need to be capturing. We haven't done that, which is sad. The second part is, I like what we haven't actually sat down and say, how do countries develop? and then develop our own economic strategies based on an understanding of our people, based on our understanding. This is why you say, like, for instance, housing in Africa. Singapore fixed housing problem. Africa can't, because you're not sitting down to fix the housing problem. You're trying to follow the problem that we have in most African countries is because there was a blueprint that was left behind during colonialism, and everyone just follows that. Up to now, like, mentally colonized, everyone just follow. Oh, this is how things are supposed to be done. This is no. That's not how no, that's not how things are supposed to be done. That's how things are supposed to be done for them. Why don't we sit down and figure out how countries develop, get that information, and have a plan that helps us develop? Not trying to follow something that's there. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm president. We try to get money from the World Bank, and the World Bank gives us maybe nothing, or they give us something, but it's not enough. You know what I would do? There's so many ways you can borrow money in this world. I know the US dollar is probably the most used currency in the world. Not probably, but it is the most used currency in the world. But at the same time, the Japanese yen is quite a strong currency. And what happens is there's a thing called the carry trade. And the Japan, for the past few years, if not decades, their economy hasn't been growing. So their interest rate has been almost zero. So what countries and other billionaires do is that they go to Japan, borrow the money. So let's say I'm worth $1 billion. I can go to Japan and even borrow $2 billion, right? As a business person, and then people take that money and then they put it in securities. So they'll put that money, let's say, in the the big 7 American companies called the Magnificent Seven. Companies that you've heard of and you use their products, such as Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, those companies. So they take the money and put the money in there, and it creates liquidity for the U.S. market. But at the same time, these guys are making even just American bonds where they're getting 5%. If you gotten money from Japan at point something interest. Even when you make 4% of $1 billion, that's a lot of money. It's called the carry trade. And some people put money in like I said, in securities, like in the stock market, and they make a lot of money from that. Even countries can go there. As a country, that's what I'll do. I'll go there, borrow the money at lesser interest, but my job is to make sure we pay back the money. And that means we have to invest in the education of our people, the right education. So and also I have to bring people together, not just educated people. Educated people are actually not the right people to develop our countries in Africa. Let me just tell you this, because when you are educated, right? This is one thing I've noticed. I've picked up. When you are educated, you get brainwashed to view things a certain way. So that's why you see a lot of economists in Africa always see things in the Western way of doing things. That's why the policies they develop don't even match what's going on in the country. That's why all these indices and what do they call them? Like points about the standard of living going up, inflation, blah blah blah. People in most of these countries don't even know what that means. There should be a way where you sit down. Like I like Friedman. He was like an economist in America, where he was explaining economy in his own way. There was also the Chicago economist that went and created an economy in Chile that has actually worked. Wasn't perfect, but it's helped the Chilean people and the Chilean government maybe improve their lives a little bit. It's not the best. Some people can even look at it in a very negative way. But these people sat down and designed that economy based on what was on the ground. Our people in Africa, they go there, the governor of the exchequer or whatever, the treasury or whatever, they go there with all the education they've received, and that's the only way they see things. They never try to look at, okay, how are things operating here? Because I think in most countries we are behind in Africa like 300 years. So if you want to really develop a country, it's like you have to go back 300 years and see what America was doing 300 years ago. And then you try to replicate that. But even that, you tweak it a little bit to suit the people you're trying to serve. So the thing about the World Bank rejecting, in most cases, Africans countries applying for money or giving them less, and then giving Ukraine so much money, it's because Ukraine has a lot of potential. It's most likely able to give that money back. If not, there are going to be a lot of mining companies from America, from Europe, that are going to be mining minerals there, and Ukraine will pay them through certain royalties, or they might say, 10 years, no taxes. You pay the American government taxes. We haven't designed that. That's why they are able to give Ukraine that. And also, you got to remember, the people who actually fund the World Bank and all this stuff, they're European people. They're not like us. So they're going to help us. They're going to help out their own. That's just how the world works. I think in Africa, people believe that everything needs to be fair. Or how about us? But nah, that's not how the world works, guys. It's not. It's like believing that you have free will. It doesn't work like that. And I'll tell you something. The world is a jungle. I keep telling you this. The world is a jungle. Everyone is trying to eat you. Actually, human nature, most people, if not all of us, like to exert pain on other people. The only thing that stops people from doing that is civilization. But otherwise, if there was no civilization, you see people just attacking each other, killing each other, or deleting each other. You will see that. It's part of human nature. So a group of people trying to suffocate you for the last 500 years, that's just human nature. But you gotta do something so you can fight back and you can stop them. But for us, we are begging, constantly begging. Our friends innovate, we beg. They're faced with a problem, they innovate, they find a solution to it. We don't try to find a solution to it, we try to beg, come and help us. The moment we change our mindset and try to start finding solutions to our problems, then we develop. Thank you guys, and thanks for watching. And please, I'll increase the flow of videos from this channel. Stay tuned. Please subscribe if you haven't, and turn the notification thing on. So every time I post videos going forward, I'm gonna try to be consistent. Or I'm gonna be consistent. I'm not gonna try to. I'm gonna be consistent. Please watch my content and enjoy the comments. And let's go. Thank you. Goodbye.